I'm 25 now, but this happened when I was 17. Back then, I was living with my dad and his wife, Candace. My mom passed away when I was 12. Dad got remarried less than 2 years later, and by the time I turned 15, I was living with them full-time. Candace had a daughter named Willow, and she was the same age as me. We even went to the same high school. Willow and I weren't enemies or anything, but we weren't friends either. We existed in the same space, kept things polite, and mostly stayed out of each other's way. It wasn't personal. It was just easier. Candace didn't seem interested in pushing us to bond either. She treated us like two totally different categories of people under the same roof. The differences started small. If Willow asked for something, the answer was usually sure or let's see. If I asked for the same thing, it became a conversation about responsibility or priorities. Sometimes Candace said no outright. Other times, she'd say something like, "That's something your father should handle." But when I went to my dad, he usually just shrugged it off. He wasn't confrontational. I think he wanted to keep the peace more than he wanted to step up. It really came to a head the spring of our senior year. My school was throwing a big prom. It was a big deal, formal venue, DJ, food, the works. Most girls were already planning their dresses, makeup, and group photos. I wasn't asking for some designer label or anything. I just wanted to feel included. I asked Candace if she could help me buy a dress. Just a dress. That's all I wanted. She didn't even think about it. She said, "Buying you a prom dress isn't my financial responsibility." That sentence still sticks with me even now. She didn't say she couldn't afford it. She didn't say we needed to wait until payday or look at clearance racks. She flat out said it wasn't her job. I went to my dad that night. He was watching some sports recap and barely looked up. I told him what Candace said and asked if he could help instead. He rubbed his face, sighed, and said, "Let's not start anything over one night. It's just prom." Meanwhile, Candace took Willow to 3 different boutiques. I know because I overheard them planning it and saw the shopping bags later. Willow tried on everything from sequins to silk, even though she hadn't picked a dress yet. They were just exploring options. When I asked if they found anything, Candace said, "We've got time. It's fun seeing what suits her." That's when it hit me. There was no money problem. The problem was me. I picked up more shifts at the cafe down the street. Minimum wage, after school, weekends, sometimes double shifts. I was trying to save up whatever I could. Shoes, accessories, hair. It was all a stretch. But none of that mattered because I didn't have a dress. There was one dress I saw in the window of a boutique on Main. Navy blue satin, a high slit, embroidered neckline, sleeveless, with just enough shimmer to catch the light without looking tacky. I stopped by the window every time I passed, but it was way out of my budget. Even if I saved every tip I got, I wouldn't get close. I didn't go to prom. Willow did, of course. She looked beautiful. She had her hair professionally done and wore a cream-colored mermaid gown with a matching clutch. There was a photo shoot in the backyard with Candace holding a ring light and directing poses. I stayed upstairs. No one asked where I was. After graduation, I left. I didn't make a big scene. I moved into a dorm, took out loans, and started building my life. I didn't visit often. My relationship with my dad faded into the occasional birthday text. I never visited for holidays. I didn't expect them to either. It was clean, distant, and quiet. Then last week, something unexpected happened. Willow messaged me. It took me a second to even realize it was her. Her profile picture was different. She looked more grown up. She said she was getting ready for her own senior prom and needed some advice. Apparently, Candace told her to reach out to me. She said I might have time to take her dress shopping. I read that message 3 times. Same Candace who told me I wasn't her financial responsibility. Same Candace who didn't want to spend a cent on my prom. Now asking me to help her daughter with hers. And not just help, take her shopping. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, looking at that message like it was some kind of test. Like someone had handed me a match and dared me to strike it. So I said yes. I picked a date and told Willow to clear her schedule. I didn't say what we were doing, just that I'd handle everything. She has no idea what's coming. Candace messaged me the day after Willow did. Just a short text asking if we could catch up sometime soon, maybe over coffee. That alone would have been weird, but the part that stood out was her tone, like we were long-lost friends or something. I agreed to meet, mostly because I wanted to see how she'd play this. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, one of those places with overpriced scones and mismatched mugs. She brought Willow with her. Willow waved at me when she walked in, then sat down and spent most of the time looking at her phone. Candace was the one doing all the talking. She started with compliments, told me I'd really grown into myself, that she loved my earrings, and then slid into how I'd always had such a great sense of style. Then she said I was basically like a big sister to Willow. That was her setup. She explained how Willow was overwhelmed with prom prep, said she didn't know where to start, and she thought I could guide her. Take her dress shopping, help her choose accessories, maybe even give her some makeup tips. Said it'd be a bonding experience. Then came the twist. Candace wanted me to cover the cost for now, and she'd pay me back once everything settles after tax season. I nodded. I smiled. I said I could help. I didn't say yes because I wanted to reconnect or do her a favor. I said yes because I already knew where I was taking Willow, and I already knew what she was going to wear. That weekend, I picked Willow up and drove her to the boutique where I had seen my dream dress 8 years ago. Same place, same window, same glass cases with silk gloves and rhinestone tiaras near the front. A lot had changed in the world since then, but that navy blue satin gown was still there. The saleswoman told us it was part of a reissued line phone of their bestsellers from years ago that they brought back with slight updates like a new slit angle and spatted beading around the neckline. It was unmistakably the same dress. Willow was quiet on the drive. I didn't press her with questions. When we got inside, she lit up a bit. I told the assistant we were looking for a spring prom dress, something elegant but not overdone. The woman pulled a few options, and I asked if they had the navy blue satin gown in Willow's size. They did. She tried on a few others first, one red, one gold, one green with a sheer cape that looked more like a costume. But when she came out in the navy gown, the room went still for a second. It fit her perfectly. Same body type I had back then, same height, same silhouette. She turned to look in the mirror and didn't say anything. Just ran her hand along the fabric like she couldn't believe she was allowed to wear it. I bought the dress. No discounts, no splitting costs, no offers to wait for reimbursement. I paid for the dress, the shoes, and the small navy clutch she liked on the way out. Total came to just under $900. I kept the receipt in my wallet, not to give to Candace, just to keep for myself. A quiet record. In the car, I asked Willow if she wanted to grab lunch. She said sure. While we waited for our food, she finally looked up from her phone and asked if I had ever wanted that dress for my own prom. I told her yes. I told her that I had seen it years ago, tried to save for it, but never made it past window shopping. I didn't add anything extra, just the facts. She didn't reply, just looked out the window and didn't say another word for the rest of the ride. That night, I sent Candace a photo of Willow in the dress. Full-length mirror, soft lighting, minimal makeup. Candace replied in less than a minute, "I'm speechless." That was it. No heart emoji, no thank you, no questions about the cost. I followed it up with one line, figured it was time someone in your house got to go to prom in that dress. She didn't reply. Willow texted me the next day asking if I could help her find earrings to match the neckline. I said sure and gave her a few online stores I liked. She hasn't brought up the conversation in the car. I didn't expect her to. But something in her shifted after that day. She started texting me directly instead of going through her mom. She asked what I studied in school. She asked about the cafe job I used to work. I kept the responses light. I don't think she knows the whole story yet, but she's starting to figure it out. 2 days after we bought the dress, Candace invited me to dinner, said she wanted to thank me properly for everything I'd done for Willow. I hadn't set foot in that house in 5 years. Part of me wanted to ignore the invite, but curiosity won. I said I'd come. The house looked exactly the same. Same chipped tiles by the front door. Same photo frames on the hallway wall. I noticed mine had been taken down. There used to be one of me from my high school graduation. It was gone. Willow's baby pictures were still everywhere, though. Candace opened the door like we were old friends, gave me a hug, told me how wonderful it was to have me back. My dad wasn't there. Apparently, he was working late. Willow gave me a quick smile, then went straight to the kitchen to help with the salad. The table was already set for 3. We sat down to eat roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and those frozen dinner rolls Candace used to burn every time. She didn't burn them this time. She made a little toast before we started eating, said she was grateful for strong women like me, and that I had been such a positive influence on Willow. Then she added, "You've grown so much emotionally since those teen years. It's really beautiful to see." She kept dropping lines like that the whole dinner. Not outright insults, just those soft jabs wrapped in compliments. Stuff like "you always did have a strong personality, and it's good to see you use it for something productive now." Willow barely touched her plate. She kept picking at her food and giving me glances like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. When we were clearing the dishes, she asked if I wanted to go for a quick walk before I left. Candace said it was a great idea, just like old times, even though that never happened when I lived there. We walked around the block. It was cool out. Willow had on a hoodie over leggings, her hair pulled up in a clip. She didn't talk at first. We got about halfway down the street before she stopped and asked, "You knew she refused to buy you a dress back then, didn't you?" I told her the truth. That I had loved that exact dress for prom. That I asked Candace for help and was told no. That I worked a job after school trying to save for something close, but never got there. That I didn't even go to prom because it didn't make sense to show up in something I didn't feel like myself in. She looked straight ahead when I said it. Then she told me something that threw me off. Back when they started shopping for her dress, Willow said she had found a different gown online. It was simple, half the price, and she liked it. She showed it to Candace, thinking it'd be a good option. But Candace told her no, said it wasn't the look we want. Turns out, Candace had been pushing her toward the navy gown for weeks. She brought up that exact dress at least twice before we even went shopping. Willow said she thought it was just one of many ideas, but after hearing what I told her, she connected the dots. She started crying. Not loud, not dramatic. Just silent tears rolling down her face while she stood there on the sidewalk. She said it felt like Candace was dressing her up to fix something she messed up years ago, like she was trying to rewind time and get a second chance using her own daughter. I didn't interrupt. I let her get through it. Then I hugged her. I told her she didn't owe Candace the perfect prom, that it didn't have to be anyone's redo, that it could still be hers if she wanted it to be. She pulled away and said she already had a plan. She was still going to wear the dress because she loved it, but she wanted to change it, make it hers. Add a black leather jacket, chunky heels, messy curls instead of an updo, nothing traditional, just her. Before we turned back, she asked me something else. Prom pictures were going to be at a park near their school. Most kids were bringing their parents or siblings for photos. She wanted me to come with her, not Candace, just me. I said yes, not with a big speech or anything, just a simple yes. We walked back in silence, and when we got to the house, Candace was waiting at the door with a mug of tea like she hadn't been watching from the window. Willow hugged me again before I left and said she'd text me the details. I got in my car, started the engine, and watched them walk inside. Candace didn't look back. This isn't over. Not yet. The morning after that walk with Willow, my phone rang before I'd even finished brushing my teeth. It was Candace. I didn't answer the first call, but she called again and again. By the third time, I picked up. She didn't waste time. Her voice was shaky, but not from sadness, from anger. She accused me of manipulating Willow and poisoning her against her own mother. Said I was twisting history and playing the victim to make myself look good. Then she claimed she didn't even remember refusing to buy me a dress back then. Said it was probably a misunderstanding and that she never would have said something like that. Then came the line, "I'm sorry you felt neglected. Not sorry she neglected me. Just that I felt it, like I imagined it." Then she told me she was seriously considering taking the dress back. Said it was sending the wrong message to let Willow go to prom wearing it if I was going to keep stirring things up. I waited until she was done. Then I reminded her, calmly, that I paid for the dress. It's in my name. I never asked to be reimbursed. I never asked her for a single dollar. That dress belongs to Willow now, and whatever Candace thinks she has power over, the dress isn't on that list. She hung up without another word. An hour later, Willow texted me a screenshot. Candace had messaged her while she was at school, telling her I was jealous of your experience and that this whole thing is her way of making it about herself. Willow didn't even reply to her. She sent me the screenshot with no context, then called me when she got home. She didn't sound confused. She sounded done, said she didn't think she had ever really seen her mother for who she was until now. Not just about the dress, but the way she acted like things from the past didn't matter until they got in the way of how she wanted things to look. That same afternoon, Willow took the dress to a small local boutique where a friend of hers worked part-time. They had a seamstress on site who specialized in prom alterations. She brought the jacket she wanted to wear with it, and they pinned the hem slightly higher so it'd show her boots better. She wanted the neckline adjusted too, less polished, more playful. While they were halfway through the pinning, Candace showed up. Somehow she'd found out where Willow had gone. She walked into the boutique like she owned the place, marched up to the dressing room, and demanded to see what they were doing to the dress. When Willow didn't respond, she started raising her voice, told the seamstress to stop, said she hadn't approved any changes and that they were ruining the integrity of the gown. The staff had to intervene. One of the assistants walked over and asked her to leave. Candace tried to argue, said she was the parent, but they reminded her that the customer was 17 and paying for the alteration herself. She stood in the middle of the boutique, looking like she couldn't believe someone dared to say no to her. Then she stormed out. After she left, Willow sat down in the little fitting room and cried. Not for long, but it was clear something cracked. She told the seamstress to go ahead with every change they had discussed. Then she looked at me and said, I don't want her involved in any of it anymore. That night, she told Candace she didn't want her at the pre-prom photo shoot, didn't want her at the send-off, didn't even want her in the parking lot. She'd already arranged to go to the park with her friends and I would be the one taking her photos. She made it clear. This was her night, not Candace's second chance. The fallout came fast. A few days later, Candace's sister messaged me again, this time through a different number I hadn't blocked yet. She said she'd heard some stuff and wanted to know my side. I didn't go into the whole history, just told her Willow had made her decision and I was there to support it. That was enough. Back at the house, things shifted. Willow told me that Candace wasn't speaking to her much directly anymore, but she'd started making loud comments when Willow was nearby. Things like some people don't respect boundaries, and you do everything for them and they spit in your face. She never said names, but it was obvious who she meant. The passive-aggressive guilt trips didn't stop Willow. She started spending more time at her friend Brielle's house after school. They were planning hair and makeup together, finalizing the look. The dress was ready, alterations were finished and paid for. The only thing left was the actual day, and Candace still hadn't accepted that she wouldn't be part of it. There's more coming. A lot more. Prom day came faster than expected. Willow asked me to come over early to help with hair and makeup, so I showed up just after breakfast with curling wands, a makeup bag, and the earrings she picked out last week. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Candace was home, moving around the kitchen like she was looking for something she wasn't going to find. She didn't greet me, just opened the fridge, shut it again, and walked down the hallway like she had errands in her own home. Willow didn't say anything to her, either. She set up a chair in front of the hallway mirror and sat down while I started curling her hair. It was the first time I'd ever seen her get ready for something without asking her mom's opinion. We picked a soft bronze for her eyes, added a little shimmer, and tied it all together with nude lipstick. When it was time to get into the dress, she disappeared into her room for a few minutes. I stayed in the hallway, tidying up bobby pins. When she opened the door, it felt like time paused for a second. The navy blue gown fit her perfectly. The seamstress had adjusted the neckline, added a bit of texture to the waistline, and stitched her jacket to tuck just right at the shoulders. She wore boots underneath, just like she planned. Not high heels, just short black boots with a thick sole. When she came downstairs, she glanced at her reflection, then looked at me and said, "It feels like this dress was meant to be mine," even before I was ready for it. Candace didn't say anything. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding a half-full mug, staring at Willow like she didn't recognize her own daughter. Willow walked right past her and grabbed her bag from the living room. That was it. No have fun, no hug, no photos in the backyard. We drove to the botanical garden, where her school was doing pre-prom photos. A bunch of her classmates were already there with their families. Tripods, flower arches, folding chairs, even a food truck parked by the entrance for drinks and snacks. Willow met up with her friends, Brielle, 2 other girls, and a guy named Mason, and they started posing by the fountains. Candace had said she wouldn't come. She told Willow earlier in the week that if she didn't want her there, she'd respect that boundary. That turned out to be a lie. Halfway through the shoot, a black SUV pulled up near the edge of the garden's private section. Candace stepped out in a full-length emerald green gown with sequins on the sleeves. She had on heavy makeup, sparkly earrings, and heels that sunk slightly into the grass with each step. She looked like she was going to prom. Everyone turned to look. She smiled like this was normal, walked straight over, and told the photographer she wanted a few solo shots of Willow. Then she reached for Willow's arm to turn her toward the lens and started fixing her posture like she was a mannequin. Willow pulled away and said, "Clear as day, this isn't your prom." Then she walked right back to her friends without looking back. Candace stood frozen for a second. Then she tried again. The photographer was grouping families for a wide shot near the rose trellis. Candace walked straight to the front of the frame and told the photographer she was the mother. Willow, without saying anything, stepped out of the group and stood off to the side. She looked at me and said, "I'm not doing this for her." The photographer gave a nervous smile and moved on to the next family. Candace didn't move. She just stood there, then turned to the crowd and said loudly, "You've turned my daughter against me." People stopped and stared. Someone whispered something. One of Willow's friends put an arm around her shoulder and led her away. Another friend called for staff. The garden event coordinator came over within 5 minutes. After a short conversation, low voices, clipped tones, Candace was escorted off the property. She didn't leave right away. She stood by the SUV, arms crossed, muttering something to herself. A second staff member walked her to the gate. The last thing I saw before we turned back was Candace slipping off her heels and getting into the passenger seat barefoot. On the ride to prom, Willow looked out the window for a while. Then she said, "She never came to my elementary school concerts, but she'll crash this just to save face?" She didn't need a reply. We pulled up to the venue just as the sun started to set. Prom was about to begin, and this time it was hers, on her terms. The morning after prom, Willow called. I could hear she hadn't slept much, but she didn't sound tired, just full. She talked fast, told me about the music, the food, how Mason almost dropped a tray of cupcakes while trying to impress a girl, said her boots were the perfect choice and that everyone kept asking where she got the jacket. Her friend Brielle had cried during the last slow dance. Then she got quiet and asked if I was still awake when it all ended. I told her I was. She paused, then said, "I had a great time," but I kept thinking about her showing up like that. After a few minutes, I asked, "Do you want to keep the dress?" I wasn't trying to push her one way or another, I just knew. How many memories had been sewn into that fabric now, both good and bad? She didn't even hesitate. "Yes, I want to keep it. It's mine now." She kept talking. She said the whole thing made her see the last few years differently. Said she used to think I was just distant and moody when we lived together. Said I didn't want to be part of the family. But now she realized how quiet it must have felt, being surrounded by people who only saw you when they needed something. She asked if it was true that I worked during school. I told her, yes. After class and weekends at the cafe, saving every tip in a tin under my bed. I used to walk past that boutique every Thursday on my way home. It became a routine. Look at the dress. Picture myself in it. Keep walking. That shifted something between us. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just this quiet understanding. For the first time, we weren't two people passing each other in a hallway. We were on the same side now. But Candace wasn't finished. Over the next few days, she started messaging me. First, it was a long voicemail, then texts, then 3 separate emails with subject lines like, "Let's be adults and we need to talk." Each one said the same thing. She wanted a conversation face-to-face to clear the air. One of them ended with, "I know I made mistakes, but you're not innocent either." I blocked her. On everything. No replies. No callbacks. No explanations. I wasn't interested in giving her the kind of closure that let her twist the ending into something neat. Willow texted me 2 days later to say she was moving out for the summer. A family friend had offered to take her in, someone who'd mentioned it before when things first got tense at home. She said it wasn't permanent, but she needed space. She packed the night before while Candace was out and left before breakfast. Later that week, Candace's sister messaged me again. She said she'd been keeping quiet, but after hearing everything, it wasn't the first time Candace had tried to live through someone else's milestone. Apparently, during her niece's graduation last year, Candace had tried to change the entire seating chart so she could be in the front row. She'd also once offered to write her friend's daughter's college essay, just to make sure it sounds impressive. The dress ended up on display. Willow brought it with her and placed it on a mannequin in the corner of her aunt's guest room. It stood beside a string of Polaroids and a pinboard filled with concert tickets and art prints. She called it her reminder not to shrink. She printed her favorite photo from prom, one where she's laughing with her friends, jacket draped over her shoulders, boots peeking out from under the satin, and pinned it inside her closet door. Not for bragging, just so she'd see it every morning and remember that she didn't fold. Candace, of course, didn't stop trying to rewrite things. She told Willow later that week she approved the dress idea all along and just didn't want to be left out of the planning. Her voice was tight when she said it. Willow didn't argue. She just stood up and walked out of the room mid-sentence. That evening, Willow came by with a small envelope. She didn't say much, just handed it to me and sat down while I opened it. Inside was a printed photo of the two of us from prom day. She had one hand on my shoulder. I was holding the camera remote, both of us squinting against the sun. She said, "You were the only one who actually showed up," and that was the moment the story changed. It's been a few weeks since prom. The glitter's settled, the Instagram stories have stopped, and the group chats moved on to graduation parties and college plans. But even with everything moving forward, the mess Candace left behind still echoed in the background. One morning, I got a text from Willow. It was a photo of the dress, still on the mannequin, standing tall in her aunt's guest room. There was a yellow sticky note pinned to the neckline that read, "She didn't give it to me. I claimed it." Willow's high school graduation was coming up. She texted again later that day and asked if I'd be willing to come. Not just to attend, but to be there. Not as a guest. As someone she wanted in the audience when her name got called. She told me Candace wouldn't be invited. Not by accident. By choice. She delivered that news to Candace herself the following weekend. I didn't witness it, but her aunt filled me in afterward. There was yelling. Doors slammed. Candace reportedly screamed that her own daughter was being cruel on purpose and that I was turning her against her own blood. Willow didn't argue. She packed a bag and left again. Spent the rest of the weekend with a friend. Graduation day arrived clear and warm. I found a seat in the back row with a decent view of the stage. The school had printed little programs with everyone's names and future plans. Next to Willow's name it said, State University Biology. When her row stood up, she caught my eye in the crowd for just a second. Then she walked across the stage, shoulders back, chin up. Not a single stumble. After the ceremony, we skipped the fancy restaurant thing and went for ramen. She wore a yellow sundress and sneakers with paint on the soles. She didn't take a million selfies. She didn't post a story. She just sat across from me and slurped noodles and laughed until she snorted. It was the most relaxed I'd ever seen her. She told me she'd been accepted to a state university 2 hours from where I live, said she'd like to visit sometimes, ask for help apartment hunting, maybe learn to drive stick shift if I was willing to teach. We talked about majors, roommates, how she wasn't sure if she wanted a dorm or a shared apartment, stuff I would have loved to talk about when I was her age, if anyone had been asking. At some point during dinner, without making it dramatic, I told her it used to hurt that she made me feel invisible. I didn't say who. I didn't have to. Willow nodded, kept eating, didn't flinch. Said, "Yeah, I know. Candace didn't show up that night. She didn't call. She didn't post anything online. No angry texts. No emotional speeches." Her silence felt planned, like she was waiting for the moment to recenter the spotlight, like she was hoping someone would come ask for her version. Willow told me Candace had already started spinning a new story at home, saying the whole thing was her idea, that she let me be involved with the dress to give me closure. She said Candace called it a kindness. Willow rolled her eyes so hard she nearly knocked over her drink. We laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it didn't sting anymore. That version didn't hold power now. The dress didn't belong to Candace's guilt trip, or some sad attempt at rewriting history. It belonged to the girl who wore it to prom, turned heads, and walked away with her head high. Before I dropped her off, Willow told me she didn't want to box the dress up. She didn't want it stored in an attic or stuffed in plastic. She said she wanted to keep it visible. Maybe one day she'd let a future little sister, niece, or daughter try it on, not to follow a tradition, but to remind them that they never have to wear anything for someone else's story. And that was it. No dramatic speech. No tearful goodbye. Just a dress on a mannequin, a girl who finally felt seen, and a shared moment in a ramen shop where laughter meant more than closure. I used to think not getting that dress was the biggest heartbreak of my teenage years, but it wasn't. The heartbreak was believing that moment defined me. Watching someone else wear that same dress and turn it into a declaration instead of a reminder, that wasn't just healing. It was something better. It was enough.